Hello everyone, welcome. I'm so glad to have you with me today for my brand new masterclass called The Couples Code, Miraculous Recovery for Couples on the Brink. Now I'm super excited to share this with you today because the topic and the ideas that I'm going to be sharing are super fundamental and foundational to creating a healthy, authentic partnership. And that is such a hugely important aspect to our well-being and how we function in the world. So thanks for joining me today. Now, before we get started, I just want to be clear at the outset who this class is for. This class is for anyone who's in a troubled, struggling, or painful relationship. It's also for you if you're in a relationship that's on the brink of getting a divorce or breaking up, or if you think that you will end up being on the brink of getting a divorce or breaking up if you don't turn around the patterns that you're in right now. So if that's you, you're in the right place because today, in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to share with you how to turn around your relationship, even if your partner's not on board. I'm also going to reveal which scientifically proven principle predicts success in your relationship with a high degree of accuracy and how to leverage this principle to get things back onto solid ground. I'm also going to share with you what the new science of connection tells us about relationship success. In addition to that, I'm going to give you a powerful way to get close to your partner again before even thinking about communication skills or worrying about conflict resolution techniques. I'm going to show you what you must do to eradicate the biggest and most powerful barrier to changing your relationship and how you can create the relationship you desire without painful or awkward couples counseling. And essentially all of what I'll be sharing, together it creates the foundation for a relationship in which you feel truly seen, heard, cherished, and happy. That's really what it's all about. Now I know that this is a bold claim, but I've got clients that are doing that right now, and I'm going to show you the exact process that they're using to make that happen. My promise to you is that by the end of our time together, you're going to have a step-by-step approach to creating a healthy, authentic, loving relationship with your partner. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to take a minute and see where you're at and check in, okay? Do you feel lonely even when you're together? Are you in the kind of relationship where you often feel misunderstood or unfairly blamed after an argument or when things go wrong? Do you see how your partner is attentive to others, bringing their A game to other people, and you wish that they would respond to you in that way? Do you have times where you feel super connected and happy, but it doesn't last and you can't seem to control it? It just feels a little bit out of your hands. Do you fear communicating or raising issues because you're worried it's going to result in a fight or stonewalling or some other negative breakdown in communication? Have you tried to turn things around before or made efforts, but then just keep falling back into old patterns? And when it all comes down to it, do you fear that no matter what you do, you're headed for divorce or separation? Like you're just on this train you can't get off of? If any of that sounds like you, then I have good news. Because none of these things, as painful as they are the real problem. They're just symptoms of the problem. You see, the real problem is you have not yet made the mental shifts that create what I call the inside-out approach to relationship transformation. And I'm going to talk about what those are in a second. But just for now, please know that once you start adopting some of these shifts that I'm going to share with you and truly start thinking from the inside out, you're going to see changes that feel miraculous to you. Once you make those shifts, you're going to find that the distance between you and your partner will disintegrate. You'll be able to speak honestly and feel closely emotionally connected. You'll be able to work together as a team with fun and joy. It doesn't always have to be so much work. You'll be the best version of yourself in the relationship. And that's really what it's all about, right? Is to be who you are, the best version of who that is, and to have a relationship that supports that and brings that out in you. And best of all, you're going to tap back into the love and passion that brought you together in the first place. Think about that. I mean, this, for where you're at right now, might seem like a distant memory, but it's so possible, and I'm going to show you how. But before we go too much further, I just want to take a quick minute and introduce myself for those of you that are not familiar, so you know who I am and where I'm coming from. My name is Monika Hoyt, and I'm a licensed therapist and relationship coach. I worked in direct practice in mental health, chemical dependency, and relationship counseling for almost 20 years in both community and clinic settings. I've spent over 15,000 hours in sessions with people, helping them to break out of bad patterns to create conscious, loving relationships. My specialty really is in teaching people how to change their limiting beliefs at the subconscious level so that changes truly stick. Over the last 10 years, I've spent thousands of hours and well over $15,000 on trainings, seminars, classes, workshops, all on relationships and the science of personal change. I've also transformed my own marriage after being on the brink myself. And that's really why I'm so passionate about this. When you're successfully able to overcome something so painful, you really want to pay it forward and you want to show others how to do the same, or at least that's how I feel. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this training is really about you and for you, but people do always want to know a little bit about where I'm coming from as a person, not just a professional. So here's just a couple pics of me and my family. The picture in the lower left-hand corner is our wedding picture, and I remember that day because we had such a clear idea of how it was going to be. We were going to have a really simple, easy life. We were going to live our dreams, we were going to create a beautiful family, and we were just going to stay in that loving place forever. So fast forward a few years later, and that picture right above it, that's from our family at Christmas time in New Zealand. We lived in New Zealand for 4 years. And I picked this picture because I had such a visceral reaction to it in remembering how far we've come from that, because actually I was miserable when this picture was taken. We looked like this cute little happy family, but I was barely getting through the day. I felt so exhausted. I felt emotionally disconnected from my husband. We were fighting all the time. This was right before we separated, in fact. So while the picture is painful to look at, it also makes me realize how far we've come. Now, the picture on the right-hand side, this was us celebrating 14 years together. This was up in Lutsen, Minnesota on Lake Superior, if any of you are familiar. And right now, we're celebrating 15 years, and it just keeps getting better. I feel close and connected, and I actually have all the things I wanted in a relationship that I did not think I could have. And it's not because I changed him, but because I changed myself. And I so want you to be able to have this experience. I want you to have that experience of being able to do in your relationship what you don't even think is possible. To be able to look back and see the troubles behind you. To be able to reflect back on where you are right now and have it be such a distant memory that you can barely even remember how you feel right now. I want you to know that you can have that relationship that you want to have with the person that you picked. So with that, let's move on now to the meat of what I want to share with you today. Now, generally speaking, all the things I teach fall under the category of what I call the inside-out approach to relationship change. Now, in addition to my own personal experience with marriage trouble, I've been doing this work professionally for a long time, and I have many colleagues in this space. And with all the experiences that I've had, the most essential thing that I've discovered was that there's a really big difference between the couples that could turn things around and the couples that couldn't. And it's not because they weren't all equally as invested, and some couples might have been trying their very hardest, but there was something that distinguished the ones that actually were successful and the ones that were not. So I developed a theory about the mindset and paradigm shifts that needed to happen in order for couples to truly break out of old patterns. Then I tested it on my own relationship. I also tested it on my friends, and then I replicated it in working with my clients once I saw that it was working. And from this process, I found that for couples in crisis, there are really 5 mental shifts that you absolutely must make in order to take your relationship from a place of struggle and disconnection, whether that be fighting or stonewalling or whatever the case may be in your relationship, to a place where you have a lasting, happy, and fully connected partnership. And I'm going to walk you through all of those 5 right now. Now, the first shift is a willingness to commit to changing yourself first. And that means that no matter what your partner is doing wrong or no matter what work they still have to do, you have to start with a commitment that you make to yourself first, regardless of the outcome. And this is important because contrary to what couples counseling will tell you, you don't actually need your partner's buy-in to save your relationship. So while this first might seem to some people like it's taking too much responsibility, it's actually extremely empowering. So even if you're separated right now and they've said they're not coming back, you have opportunities in every interaction to make and exhibit these changes. The truth is that saving a relationship most often starts with only one person doing the work. Well over 75% of the couples I've helped have only had one person with both feet in at the beginning of the process. And they might not have even had 2 feet in. They might have only had 1 foot in. But they were willing to take that first step. And that was what turned things around ultimately. Now, the reason that this is the case is because when it comes down to it, changing the dynamics of a relationship, While the dynamics and the interactions take place between two people, the actual source of change is within us. Transforming a relationship is an inside job. It starts with looking inward. That is why you actually only need one person to change the quality and the nature of the relationship. And it's also because you can only change you, right? We've heard this before. You can't do anything to change your partner aside from seek to influence, which may or may not work, and sometimes it backfires. But ultimately, all relationships that are saved because at least one person looked inward and decided who they wanted to be. Now, here's how I think about it. The intention to focus on you and your side of the street is a form of integrity and commitment to non-reactivity. So make that decision now to focus on you. Take responsibility for everything that you can on your side of the street and let go of their side completely. Now, this is, of course, easier said than done, but once you set your intention, you can move forward by asking yourself and taking the time to really answer these 3 questions. What dynamics do you not want to take part in? What's happening now in your relationship that you feel like, oh my goodness, we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you feel powerless to change it? What is your part in that dynamic, and how can you stop participating in it? Is there something you can literally just stop doing and not do it? Could it be the absence of a behavior, or could it be the presence of a new behavior? What could you do to break out of the dynamics you no longer want to participate in? And the reason why this is such a powerful first step is because it's so much easier to identify the problem than it is the solution or what's going to work. If you can just look at what the problem is, then it's easy to say, okay, that's the problem. How do I no longer take part in that? That's your starting point. The second question is, who do you want to be, and how does that show up in your conversations? Who do you want to be as a person? In all of your interactions, really, what are the values that are guiding you, and how is that going to show up not just in your conversations, but in every interaction that you have with your partner? And finally, what are you willing to change about yourself right now? There's obviously something everybody can work on, and maybe you've already identified that for yourself. It's a lot easier to identify it than it is to really make that commitment to changing it. And even if you don't know exactly how that's going to work, I'm going to get into a little bit more of what can help you with that in a little while. But for now, just write down, what are you willing to change about yourself right now, starting today? Now have a think about that. Take a moment to brainstorm. Set your intention to do those things going forward. And this is going to be so important, because if you fail to do this, the default mode is going to be to focus on your partner. And focusing on your partner is what's going to sabotage the relationship. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. When you focus on your partner, you will sabotage the relationship. And this is how it does this. When you focus on them, first of all, you're giving your power away. So no matter how nicely you say things or how well-meaning you are, and maybe your partner has a problem you're trying to help them with and you need them to change something, when you focus all your energy on them to create the relationship change, you're actually siphoning off all of your resources and your emotional bandwidth on things you can't control. And then that leaves you feeling drained and hopeless. It just sort of confirms that feeling that nothing works or that you're powerless. And it feels that way, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's only because you're focusing on the wrong things. The other thing it does is it strengthens your partner's defenses. So when you push on them and you focus on them, you're actually strengthening their resistance or their defensiveness, because they're not even able to look inward if they're resisting you, right? They're outward focused. They're focused on putting walls up against you so that they don't have to feel like a bad person. And it's only when you pull back and in effect support their defenses that they can actually lower those defenses in the safety of the new environment that you're creating with this shift. And that's good news, because you're going to find that by letting go of your partner's stuff and focusing on yourself, you actually create, and I mean powerfully create, the change in the climate of the relationship, which then ends up changing the dynamic in your partner. And this is the part that couples describe as miraculous. Okay, so they say that once they fully let go of the things they wanted to see or the things that they really wanted to have from their partner, once they fully accepted or worked from the, operated from the assumption that they can't have it and focused on themselves, they ended up getting the things they wanted all along. Because this is how it works. The shifting of focus onto you, it catalyzes the changes you want to see. They might be inspired by the changes that you're making, or they might feel generous because they see that the focus is off of them, and then they can really see themselves in a new light. They're no longer reacting, but facing themselves squarely because they want to. They might be thinking, wow, I can't believe this is so great. I want to help make this a better relationship too. Let me do my part. And it comes from them. And so it's so much more powerful. It also empowers you and clarifies boundaries like nothing else can. When you stay in your lane, you realize how much control you have over yourself. And you also see clearly what's yours and what's theirs. You're no longer confused by blurred lines. You're no longer confused by who owns what. You don't question if you're implicated in something that's going on. And that's hugely freeing, right? And I always say, if it's not yours, don't pick it up. And finally, focusing on yourself creates change because your partner can't not respond differently when you change the dance. And this is true even if your partner has work to do. If you've been playing out the same argument or the same patterns and you mix up your part in that pattern, the whole dynamic must change. And we often use that metaphor of dance because it really illustrates this. If you've been doing the same dance and then you change your moves, what happens? Your partner has to change theirs too. At first, the dance gets thrown off. Your partner might lose their balance for a minute or be confused. But then if they want to re-engage with you, their moves will change too. So I highly, strongly encourage you to tap into this power. It actually feels easier in the end. So if you feel like you've been pushing a boulder uphill or you've been taking on more than your share of the emotional labor, you're going to find that if you have the courage to let go of what's not yours, it's actually much, much, much easier. So focus on you because it's the only power you have. And I'm not just saying like you should focus on you because it's the only power you have. While that's true, it's so much more than that. It's actually that the power that you have is so much more powerful than you even realize. You will be amazed at how much power you actually have when you make this shift. So let go of convincing your partner of anything. Let go of analyzing. Let go of showing your partner your point of view. Focus on what you can change and then just live it. And I promise you're going to be gobsmacked and amazed. Now, once you've made the commitment to inside-out change and you're focusing on just yourself, you can leverage the next mental shift. And this second shift is actually a new way of thinking based on a scientifically proven principle. Now, this principle, which I refer to as the proven principle, it actually predicts the success or failure of long-term relationships. And I'm going to get more into that in a second. But did you know that if you're getting along 50 to 70% of the time, your relationship is statistically not likely to succeed or to last? In fact, if you're doing well about 50% of the time, then you're likely to end in separation or divorce. And this is based on Dr. John Gottman's highly respected longitudinal research, where he followed married couples over the span of many years, long-term married couples, and he isolated the variables that predict divorce. And he found that couples with a ratio of 5-to-1 of positive to negative had a stable marriage. These were the couples that were not talking about divorce. These were the couples that it never even occurred to them, right? They just took it for granted and they lived their happy, stable marriage. He also found that couples with a ratio of 0.8-to-1 were highly unstable and on the brink of divorce, and this was predicted to over 90% accuracy. But on the other end of the spectrum, he found that couples with a ratio of 20-to-1 were extremely happy and fulfilled couples. Now, these were the couples that would speak highly of each other in the company of others. They expressed fondness and admiration on a regular basis. They looked forward to seeing each other. They made bids for connection throughout the day. They really saw their partner as their ally. And if you ask them, they would say that they were extremely happy and fulfilled. So that's ultimately what we're headed for. But what does this all mean to you? Now, the implications of this are pretty clear. You don't eliminate the negative interactions, and you don't completely get rid of all the problems. You just have to expand the positives until the negatives become marginal by comparison. Now, this is representing a radical shift, okay, because mainstream counseling and therapy is very problem-focused, looking at symptoms and diagnosing, digging up the past, staying in the problems in order to solve the problems. But what we focus on expands. Where we place our attention, that's really what we're giving our energy to, and that's what we're going to be creating more of. So the solution is to shift focus away from the problems and tune into what's working. And this may seem counterintuitive because we want to fix things, we want to solve things, we want to feel resolved before we can move on and say that we're feeling better. But what the research also shows is that there will always be unsolved problems in a happy, successful marriage. So letting those be and expanding the positive will get you on solid footing. Turning things around means accepting that there's going to be some things, obviously not deal breakers, but some problems that you'll never solve. He found that couples that had problems early on in their marriage or even their relationship before they got married were the same exact problems they still had at the end of their marriage. There were some things that they could never ever fix or see eye to eye on, but that did not mean that they were unhappily married. So it's very important to just come from a place of acceptance that there's going to be some things that you're not going to be able to solve and you're not going to be able to fix. If you keep focusing on the problems, you're going to end up destroying the relationship. There's no way around this because if you're staying energetically in the place of the problem, you're strengthening it. But if, on the other hand, you turn your efforts towards growing the number of positive interactions and shooting for that ratio of 5-to-1 or higher, you can then circle back to address issues from a place of positivity. And that changes everything. So decide that you're going to use your focus to expand the positive aspects of your relationship. That is going to save your relationship in a measurable, observable way while you're spending less energy. It's really just about working smarter, not working harder. Now, the third mental shift that supports the inside-out change process is a focus on connection as opposed to communication. Traditional or mainstream approaches to relationship counseling focus on communication, and we tend to think of these things as one and the same, right? We think, well, if we can communicate, we feel connected. But they're not the same at all. And this is because the need for connection is literally wired into us as a mechanism of survival. So if you think about it like this, if somebody's not attuned to us as an infant, or if people don't have our back when we're vulnerable, on a biological level, we won't survive, right? We will not survive. So when we feel vulnerable emotionally and our partner doesn't appear to be meeting us or turning towards us when we're in distress, then we are wired to see them as a threat to our safety and go into fight or flight mode. So the first thing to do is to really be okay with the primal need that we all have for emotional connection. And I'll explain more about what that is in a minute, what that really is. But this way of thinking is different from our traditional focus on adulthood being achieved through growing out of connection needs and becoming quote-unquote independent. So with that, I want to further distinguish between this difference between connection and communication to really clarify what I mean. Communication is essentially cerebral, whereas connection is primal. Connection is something you have to think in order to do, and you have to use the frontal lobe of your brain to access language, to find the right words, to make a request rather than an accusation, to use an I statement, all those tools you learn. And if you're upset, that's super hard. Think about the last time that you were really upset. I bet you that whatever skills you had learned or, things that you said you were going to do differently next time probably just went right out the window, right? Because it's biological. We aren't able to access the frontal lobe of our brain once we're triggered. Now, connection, on the other hand, is primal. It's a whole body experience, and it's a signaling to the body that you're safe. So another way to put this is that communication techniques are mostly verbal, whereas connection is physical. And so this emotional connection can actually be achieved through touch, through eye contact, and by physical proximity. You don't have to use your tools or any of your skills. You can actually connect through stillness and presence. And finally, it's important to realize that communication doesn't even fully work until or unless you're emotionally connected. For example, if you're trying to communicate honestly about your feelings about something, it doesn't go well if on a deeper level you feel or your partner feels like you are the opposition, if you are each other's opposition. But from a place of connection, you're operating from the assumption that you're on the same team and you can collaborate to find a solution. Buttons aren't getting pushed, you're not as triggered, you're not as mired in false beliefs about the other person. And maybe you've had this experience before where when you feel close, the problems just don't seem that bad, right? Because you know you're going to be okay. You know you're okay. And that is the power of true emotional connection. Now, there's a growing awareness in the field of relationships on the importance of this particular type of connection. It's been supported by the cutting-edge research and new brain science, which was put forward by Dr. Sue Johnson. And actually, there's some much older research on attachment that's kind of having a resurgence now. It's being brought back up again in light of her work. And the premise of the science goes very much against this idea that to be a healthy adult, you have to be quote-unquote independent. In fact, what it suggests is that independence is not healthy. What's healthy is to be connected and interdependent, to truly need each other, because in fact we do. The science also shows that we're wired for attachment in adulthood all the way up until we die. We don't outgrow our need for attunement from others in order to feel well, in order to feel safe. And that essentially means that one sign of health is trusting others and being trustworthy in the most primal way. Now, in order to move into how we can create this type of emotional connection, let me just crystallize this a little bit further, because I get a lot of questions about what this really is exactly. Emotional connection is deeper than emotional support. It is the predictable accessibility of affection, touch, and intimacy. Now, this does not mean that our partner is always going to be able to protect us or solve our problems from a place of emotional connection. Okay? Emotional connection does not mean that they're going to be able to protect us from everything. It just means that you're operating from the knowledge that you're not facing your problems alone. This knowledge alone keeps couples feeling close and staying together forever. Whereas traditional counseling promotes skills like active listening techniques. That's like putting the cart before the horse. As Dr. John Gottman would say, and I love this quote, trying to use communication tools with couples in crisis is like, quote, doing Olympic-level gymnastics when the couple can barely walk. Now, that's not to say that these tools and skills are not valuable, because they are. They're very valuable, and I use them, but they come later, and they're only used effectively once the couple is connected and emotionally safe and on solid footing. So what can you do to create emotional connection? There's a lot of things that you can do. It really, depends on the context of your relationship and what makes your partner feel safe. And you can definitely have a conversation with your partner about that. But in general terms, simple things like holding hands, hugging, just putting your hand on their shoulder or back, putting your arms around them, making eye contact, turning your body towards them when they're speaking, giving them their full attention. The physical act of making connection. It can even just be stillness, sitting next to them and just being with them. Now, if your partner does this to you, resist the urge to ask them, what are you thinking or how are you feeling? Resist the urge to analyze or explain, right? That can come later. That's just going to take you out of the immediate primal experience once you start mediating the experience through language. So try to stay in that physical sense of attunement. It really, really works. And if you can do this, you're going to find that's going to help you with tackling issues down the line. And that's because emotional connection is the foundation for all problem solving. Now, I touched on this before when I mentioned that this type of connection creates that deep knowing that you're both on the same team, right? That you have each other's back. That's what makes it possible to tackle difficult problems. That's what makes it possible to collaborate in spite of the fact that you might have differences of opinion or differences in communication style or even differences in some of the things that you value. So you always have to remember emotional connection is first. If you ignore this and jump right to communication without that connection, which can be super tempting, you're going to be failing at those conversations. And then you're going to start to believe that the relationship can't be saved, right? You end up with despair and self-doubt and just that devastation of feeling like you can't fix it. But if you can connect in this particular way and make this the primary foundation, you're going to feel completely seen and heard. You're going to feel loved, you're going to feel safe, and you're going to feel excited to live life with this person that you chose. Because from a place of emotional connection, there's literally nothing that you can't do together as a couple. And that's a beautiful thing. Now, here's where things get interesting, and this brings us to our next mental shift. Because once you're at the point of being able to set your intention and create that emotional connection, you may notice that things get in the way. You might end up backsliding or falling into old habits. And this is just simply a reflection of the biggest and unfortunately invisible barrier to changing your relationship. So this next shift is going to be about breaking the invisible barrier to relationship transformation. And this invisible barrier is what I call our subconscious limiting beliefs. These are what are responsible for pulling you backwards in spite of your best intentions and all the tools that you've learned. Because knowledge and information is just not enough. Now let me explain further. I'm going to back up a bit and I'm going to start off by saying something that may seem a little bit odd. Especially if you're in a relationship right now that you're really, really wanting to be different than it is. And that's that because of the power of subconscious beliefs, the printout of your life is exactly what you want. And I'm just going to say that again. When you look at the printout of your life, what you have in front of you right now is what you actually want. How your life looks, what you don't have, all of those things are a reflection of what your old programs, the deepest part of you, has chosen. Now, when you hear that, you might be thinking, well, that's ridiculous. I don't at all want what I've got, and I definitely want what I don't have. There's things I want that I don't see in my life right now. But to think about this, and to give you an idea of how powerful this is, the subconscious mind is 10 million times more powerful than your conscious goals. So that basically means that your conscious goals are 10 million times less powerful than your old programs that you might not even be aware of. Dr. Bruce Lipton speaks about this in his amazing book called The Biology of Belief, and he writes that the subconscious mind processes 40 million bits of information per second versus the conscious mind only processes 40 bits. And our beliefs are formed in the first 7 years of our life when our brainwaves are in a dreamlike state. So when we're kids, if you think about kids, they don't really think yet, right? They're just downloading messages around them, making beliefs out of those messages, and then those become hardwired into us on a level that we're not even able to recognize. So when you make a decision to do something differently in the future, and then you fail, don't beat yourself up so badly, because going against your old programs is literally like holding a tidal wave back with your arm. It's pretty much not possible. So the only way to create real and truly lasting change is to get your subconscious programs on board. The only way to change your relationship is to change the old beliefs that are holding you back. Now, this is because if you don't get them aligned with your conscious intentions, those subconscious programs are going to rise up to sabotage your amazing progress. Self-sabotage is a huge topic in any realm of personal change or transformation. This always comes up, right? And self-sabotage can come up as just about anything. It can be anxiety that comes from having done something positive that's outside your comfort zone. Maybe it was setting a limit or expressing what you really feel. It can show up as fear, just straight up fear, like knots in your stomach, racing heart, or a desire to run. It can show up as guilt. It can show up as self-doubt and grief, and worst of all, negative self-talk. Now that's a big one. You might hear yourself say things like, well, you can't do that. Don't be ridiculous. Or you're not worthy. Or who the heck do you think you are? Right? That's so silly to think that I could ever have that. Or that's for other people, not me. These voices become stronger when you're moving in the right direction, when you don't address those deepest beliefs at the subconscious level. But here's the good news. If you can successfully internalize new beliefs, you can consciously transform your relationship without struggle. So this must happen if you're stuck in your relationship now, because it's all about what we believe we can do or have or achieve in the end. As Henry Ford says, and I love this quote, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Now, I'm not able to teach you how to create permanent changes in your beliefs in this class today. That would just take too much time. It essentially is going to involve activating both hemispheres of the brain at the same time and creating a visceral, emotional, kinesthetic experience while you're internalizing these new beliefs. And there are several modalities that can accomplish this. But for today, I do want to leave you with some guiding questions that you have to ask yourself in order to start this process of breaking the invisible barrier to old programs and creating the relationship that you want. The first thing you have to do is you have to ask yourself, what kind of relationship do I want to have? Now that seems like such a simple question, right? But sometimes we don't even get super clear on that. What relationship do you want to have? It's easy to see what you have that you don't like. How can you flip that around and articulate the type of relationship that you do want to have? Then you're going to ask yourself, who do I need to be in order to have and to keep that relationship? Who do you need to be in order to not only create the dynamics that you want to have, but also to be able to maintain those dynamics in the relationship? And finally, what must you believe in order to be that person? Once you know what you want and who you need to be, then you can laser focus on the beliefs that you're going to need to internalize in order to support that vision. So get really specific. What do you need to believe about yourself? What do you need to believe about the world? What do you need to believe about love? What are the core beliefs that you must have? Okay, because choosing your beliefs consciously is so powerful. And I get this question a lot where people will say, well, if I pick a belief, then I'm just making something up and I'm just telling myself something. What if it's not true? And I always say that your consciously chosen beliefs are in no way less arbitrary than the beliefs that you inherited through the messaging of your environment. So in other words, nothing that you assume is true from the past that informs you now is any more true than what you decide to be and to make true now. So take control, be in charge of that, and break the invisible barrier holding you back. Nothing is more worthwhile, I promise you. Now, this brings me to our last mental shift that's part of the inside out approach to relationship transformation, and that's stop trying to do this all on your own. And the reason that I say this is because turning around a struggling relationship is nothing less than a massive feat of personal transformation and a mastery of entirely new skills. And I'm going to say this again because this is so important. Turning around a struggling relationship is nothing less than a massive feat of personal transformation and mastery of entirely new skills. In my opinion, trying to do that without proper training is crazy. Anytime we set out to master a whole new skill set or art form, we sign up for classes, we sign up for coaching, we get a mentor, we get the support that we need. And the truth is that individuals and couples who truly turn around their relationships, the ones that are capable of saving their relationships, those are the ones that recognize that we all have blind spots. We all need encouragement when we practice new skills. We all benefit from somebody honing our skills, tweaking, challenging, and course correcting us while we practice. And we all get traction from somebody who's keeping the big picture in mind. So if you're serious about making real changes, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't get the right support. Now, I've invested in coaching myself. It's always been a big decision, and I've never regretted it. You know, it's really just about how long do you want to take? How much do you want to struggle? How painful do you want it to be? It's a gift to be able to get traction from somebody that you trust and to catapult yourself through the coaching into true and lasting change that comes from structured and systematic support. Now, this is something that I've talked about before. I think that our culture as a whole, we really value romantic relationships and we expect a lot out of our romantic relationships. We want them to meet our needs, our every need. We want our person to be our everything. It's something that we all desire, and yet it's not something that we're ever taught. We're not taught in school what healthy communication looks like, ever. We're not encouraged to spend time on it. And in fact, most people will even poo-poo self-help books or the woo-woo world of, trying to communicate in a healthy way. But if it's something that you value, if it's something that's important to you, and I would argue that it's the foundation for a healthy life in general, a healthy, authentic, loving relationship provides the foundation for how we do in life, how we do at work, how we do with our children, how we do with our physical health, our emotional health, everything. Our whole entire quality of life is hinging on the quality of our relationships. So it's absolutely essential, if you're serious about change, that you get some support. Now, getting the right support allows you to live your dreams with a partner that you love and that you chose. So find the best coach for you, invest what you need to work with them. I'm not talking about couples counseling. I'm talking about a relationship coach that you can use for just you or who will also incorporate your partner if they want to be involved. Give yourself that gift. Shop around if you need to. Find the right fit. It will be the best thing that you ever did for your entire life. So with that concludes the fifth and final shift that I'll be discussing today. I just want to take a quick moment and go over what we've covered in order to summarize. At the beginning of this talk, I promised I would show you how to turn around your relationship even if your partner's not participating, which scientifically proven principle predicts long-term success, and how to leverage this principle to get you on solid ground, what the new science of relationship tells us about relationships. I also told you how it was possible to feel close again with your partner, even without learning new communication tools, what you need to break the biggest barrier to changing your relationship, and how to create the relationship that you want without painful or awkward couples counseling. And this information essentially all boils down to the 5 shifts. And I'm just going to go over these really quick, okay? These mental shifts that you absolutely must have in order to transform or save your relationship are a commitment to inside-out change, using the proven principle, the 5-to-1 or higher ratio, letting go of problems is part of that, focusing on connection, not communication, breaking that invisible barrier of subconscious limiting beliefs, and stop trying to go it alone. These 5 shifts alone have the capacity to radically change and raise the bar on your relationship. So if you do nothing else, just focus on these 5 things, and I can guarantee radical transformation. So now you have a choice with what to do with all of this, right? And this is the part that we all face after we learn new things. You can take the information that you've been given and think, yeah, that's cool, I want to try that. But then life gets busy and you back burner it or you forget about it. And in that case, even if unconsciously, you're essentially making a decision to keep things the same. You'll continue repeating the same patterns, continue feeling disconnected, misunderstood, stuck, unfairly blamed, or depending on your situation, you'll remain in a place of anxiety about speaking to your truth and hanging on to resentments. Lack of action is going to guarantee more of the same. But, on the other hand, you can commit to taking this information to create inside-out radical change in your relationship. You have the ability to create true and lasting emotional connection, to get to that place where you can communicate with that perfect balance of honesty and love, and respond to the challenges that you face with mental clarity and confidence like you've never had before. If you get nothing else out of this talk today, I want you to really remember that you absolutely can have the relationship that you desire with the partner that you chose, the person that you picked to create this life together. You can tap back into the love that you had at the beginning of the relationship. It's still there, it's just buried, and you can get back on the same team with your partner for the rest of your lives. If that's what you want and you feel ready to make a change, then this is what I have for you. My coaches and I have set aside some time over the next couple of days to speak to you personally in a complimentary session about how you can apply what I've taught here today in your relationship starting right away. Whatever your biggest challenges are, I can tell you I've seen them and I know how to help you overcome them. Now, in this session, we're going to be hearing from you and we're going to get some clarity on what your dynamics and challenges are, what your goals are, and then work with you to create a step-by-step plan to bring your relationship back from the brink and onto solid footing. It's really designed to help you get the love that you desire, even if your partner is not 100% on board with coaching or counseling. Now, I do just have a few criteria for booking the session. In order to use it, you must be in a long-term committed relationship or marriage that is struggling, but was once based on real love. You must hold yourself to the highest standard of honesty, and you must be willing to self-reflect and take ownership of your relationship. And finally, you must be willing to invest in your relationship and prioritize the process of change that's required to get success and to fully achieve your relationship goals. This session is not for venting or for free relationship tips because you can find those on my blog or you can do a Google search. That's the easy part. What I've found is that if couples in crisis could really fix their relationship by dabbling in some tools that they read or using some tips as band-aids to keep them from falling apart for a few weeks at a time, then they certainly would have done that by now. And in my experience, that just isn't what works. If you truly want changes, if you want your relationship to go from toxic and struggling to healthy and authentic, then that takes comprehensive, systematic changes at the foundational level. You can't put the cart before the horse, and you can't build the walls before the foundation's put in, and it's the same with relationships. So if you're just interested but not committed, or if you're not at the stage where you're ready to take action, then this call is not a good fit for you. This call is also not for you if your partner has clearly moved on and they're not willing to come back. If they're having an affair currently and they have zero interest in ending it. If your partner has an untreated acute addiction or personality disorder, or if you have an untreated acute addiction or personality disorder, or if there's been any domestic violence in the relationship thus far. And if the latter is the case, then I urge you to find a therapist that specializes in the cycle of violence and anger management issues, because that's going to have to be handled before anything else can be done. But if you meet the criteria for the call and you're ready, then I want to warmly invite you to book a session using the link that you're going to see at the end of my talk in just a minute. Now, some of you might be wondering, why would we be offering a free session to a total stranger? And I just want to let you know that, first of all, I do this all the time, right? I do this because I truly love helping people restore the love in their relationship. That's my passion, and that's my life's work. Plus, as you can imagine, I help my clients with this stuff. So if we get on the phone and it's a good fit for both of us, then we can explore how I can help you transform your relationship from struggling into a solid, authentic, and loving partnership. So if you want to book a call and explore this further, then just go to monikahoyt.com/apply, and you should see a little button showing up underneath the slide or next to it that you can just click on, and that will take you right to my calendar page. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, or if you're watching this on your phone, then you might have to actually enter this into your web browser as a URL. But once you enter it and you go to that page, you're going to see some available time slots. Just grab the one that you want. And as soon as you do that, you're going to be taken to a quick questionnaire. It's about 5 or 6 questions. And once you answer those questions, then your booking is complete. And then either I or one of my amazing coaches will call you at the time that you selected. Now, we're committed to providing value on the call regardless of the outcome, and I look forward to speaking with you. So just go ahead to monikahoyt.com/apply. That's Monika with a K, Hoyt, HOYT.com/apply. And that's it for today, guys, in terms of my material. I hope it was helpful. My wish is that you will take some of the things I've taught you here today and apply it in your relationship immediately. I really enjoyed this talk, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much, and bye for now.